All right, today we are diving into one of the most powerful ideas in all of philosophy, and we're going to ask a really modern question about it. Plato's cave. Are we still prisoners, but in a digital world? So let me just start by asking you something pretty direct. The world you see every day, everything you hear, everything you read online, is any of it really real? And just think about this for a second. Is it possible that what you call reality is just a projection, nothing more than a bunch of shadows dancing on a wall that's been put right in front of you? Now, that might sound like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's a question that Plato was asking 2,400 years ago. And honestly, it's never been more relevant. So, welcome to what you could call the digital cave. I mean, just think about virtual reality, right? It's a technology literally designed to create a completely convincing, immersive illusion. It's a world built by a computer that can feel just as real as the one outside the headset. It's kind of the perfect modern version of Plato's whole idea. But to really get why, we need to go back to the original. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to rewind the clock way back to ancient Athens to really understand the original blueprint for this whole concept, the allegory of the cave, from Plato's masterpiece, The Republic. Take a look at this. This is an engraving from the 1600s, and it just brings Plato's scene to life. You can see the prisoners, they're chained up, forced to stare at that wall. And those shadows, they're being cast by puppeteers who are hiding from view. For these prisoners, that shadow play is everything. So here's the whole setup. Just imagine a bunch of people who've been prisoners in a cave since they were children. They're chained so they can't move their heads. All they can see is the wall right in front of them. Now behind them, there's a fire. And between the fire and the prisoners, there's a walkway where puppeteers are holding up objects, little statues of animals and people. These objects cast shadows on the wall. And for the prisoners, those shadows aren't like reality. They are reality. That's all they've ever known. Plato just puts it so perfectly. He says the prisoners would believe the echoes they hear are the actual voices of the shadows, and they'd give the shadows names as if they were real things. Their entire universe is just this flat, two-dimensional show. The easiest way to picture it today, it's like being stuck in a movie theater that you can never, ever leave. The movie playing on that screen becomes your entire world. But this is where the story gets really interesting. What happens if one of these prisoners is suddenly freed? Well, that's the journey to the light. And believe me, it is not easy. Plato is super clear that this is a really painful process. First, the prisoner is forced to turn around and look at the fire. The light is blinding, it hurts his eyes, and he's totally confused. Then he gets dragged, against his will, all the way out of the cave. The sunlight outside is even more painful than the fire, but eventually his eyes start to adjust. He starts seeing reflections in water, then the real objects, and finally, he can actually look up at the sun itself. He's achieved enlightenment. And the sun in this story, it's not just the sun, It's a symbol. It represents the highest, purest form of knowledge, what Plato called the form of the good. It's the source of all truth, of all reality. And Plato breaks this down for us with his analogy of the sun. Think about it. In the visible world, the sun lights everything up so we can see. Well, in the world of ideas, the good does the same thing. It illuminates our minds with truth, and that's what allows us to have knowledge and reason. It's the source of everything. Okay, so that's the story from 2,400 years ago. It's a cool story, but how does it show up in our own lives? Are we, in our own ways, chained up today? When you look at it this way, the parallels to our digital world are pretty striking. The chained prisoners? Well, that's us, the immersed users. The puppeteers? They're the developers, the content creators, the people designing the algorithms. And the shadows on the wall? Yeah, that's our screens, our social media feeds, the stuff we look at every single day. But here's the real trap. Here's the really tricky part. If we even consider the idea that we might be in some kind of cave, who actually thinks they're still chained? Or do we all just assume we're the special one, the one who escaped? Somebody on Reddit just nailed this. They said that when people hear this story, they almost always see themselves as the hero, the philosopher who breaks free. We almost never think, hey, maybe I'm one of the people still stuck in the cave, happily watching the shadows. This is a psychological bias that is literally timeless. You could say it's the very first description of what we now call main character syndrome. The allegory isn't just about what's real, it's about how we trick ourselves into thinking we're the star of the show. So, where does that leave us? What are we supposed to do with all this information? How do we even begin to escape our own cave? Well, the lessons are pretty profound. First, just because everybody knows something doesn't make it true. A lot of common knowledge is just a shared illusion. Second, real learning, getting to the truth, it's hard. It can even be painful because it means we have to admit we were wrong. It means you have to be willing to look at your own ideas and say, nope, that was a mistake. And ultimately, it means it's on us. It's our job to question what we see and believe. Which really just leaves us with one final, unavoidable question, the one Plato wanted every single one of us to ask. So take a hard look at your own life, your own beliefs, your own screen, and ask yourself, what shadows are you watching?